Good morning, everyone. It's Joker, and today we are back with another slime video, the third video in the Heroes Jubilee 31 category. We're going to be taking on Normal Battle 3. As you can see, the scores look fairly good right here. I don't really feel like pushing any higher because there's not much more to improve on. This goes up to 500 points, that goes up to 500 points, and otherwise it's 72.5, 52.5, and I really can't be bothered. We got it on this one, we're fine. But this will be the third video in the Jubilee Showcase. All three videos will be linked together, and there will be a separate playlist on my channel for Heroes Jubilee 31 that you can go search for and find the other two fights easily. Disclaimers, though, got to get them out of the way since they're all individual videos now, is that 1, your results may vary because my box is different than yours and I have more units than you do. Your scores are not going to look the exact same as mine. So just take what you can, use this video as a reference, and then build a team that can, get the general idea of what you need to do down. Disclaimer number 2 is that these are the characters I use for maximum protection gauge on turn 1, and these are the characters that I use for maximum skill points on turn 1. So if you have them, and if you're ever wondering why I have so many skill points or protection gauge, this is why. And the third disclaimer is don't forget to go into your Town of Tempest and optimize your magic output buildings for especially light units right here, because they are your nuker for Normal Battle 3, and you want as much stats as you can on that nuker to do the most amount of damage and tank as well as you can. So don't forget to do that, but with that said, let's dive into Normal Battle 3. Alright, so the first Normal Battle 3 team is going to be the Blanc Nuke with the Visions of Coleus, Lumi here to buff her, with Violet, the hero guy, and Space Sufia, because we do need her for the turn 1 orb change, 2 oranges to 2 greens, and her second skill is the Charm effect, which gives us 15% ult gauge for 1 turn, which will just help us get Blanc's EX ult, because that's what we're going to need here. So we've got the standard big 3, we've got turn 2 protection, Blanc herself is turn 2 protection, and then we've got Violet, Hero, and Guy with turn 3 protection. So everybody here is protection gauge, because we just want as many stacks as possible within 5 turns to get max turn bonus. Now, if you cannot physically do 1,000,000 damage in 5 turns because you just lack the buffs, then you can go to turn 6 and you will lose, points on the max turn, but also the Orc's defense leaves on turn 6, which means it'll make it easier to actually hit 1,000,000 damage with all of your buffs on. So that is, you could either flip between turn 5 or turn 6. It's just dependent on how strong your team is. Ideally, you'd want to do 1,000,000 damage on turn 5 for max score and max turn bonus. But let's go ahead and jump into that fight. Alright. So entering the fight, we're going to have to swap out Violet and the hero for Guy and Sufia, because we need the orb change. We also need the turn 2 protection traits. We're not gonna get like a double stack of protection gauge turn 1 because we're sending greens and not blues. But every little bit of protection gauge does help out. So we're gonna leave it like this. We're gonna go ahead and send it. Blanc is our nuker. She's gonna give herself the weakness buff plus the synergy resistance down. Violet's got the magic buff. Guy has the ult buff, and the hero is pretty much here for rewind. But we do also use her buff. Turn 3, he does attempt to nerf the front line's crit rate by 30%. If you can play around that, but on this run, I just don't worry about it. And I just pray that we hit the 70% chance to crit, because we do need it to hit damage cap on turn 5. So here, we've got enough points to full orb change. We only have 1 orb for Blanc, which is pretty unfortunate, but it is what it is. You can't really do much about it. So we're going to swap Guy out for the hero, because next turn we're going to rewind and attempt to get as much protection gauge and as many points as possible. And hopefully more Blanc orbs, right? Hopefully. Which we got 2. 2. It's not great. But we put the charm on already, which there's 15% right there. So it only lasts for 1 turn, unfortunately. Like Shinsha and Shion and I think Summer Lumi's, theirs last for 3 turns, which is a lot better, but we don't have a use for them on this team. So there we go. Let's go ahead and bring... let's make a choice here. We gotta bring somebody in. So, orb change. Cool, we need Guy's orb change, so we don't have enough points to rewind yet. So, but we're gonna leave the hero up front. So, full hand of blues again, and we'll just continue with it. I do have the alt gauge charm on as well, so we could just double rush Blanc's alt in case, you know, we don't get a lot of orbs for her, which we're not getting. Yeah, look at that, 1 orb. Ooh, it's perfect. There's the crit nerf right there. So, you know, if you are trying to crit, you generally want to avoid that, but in case you just don't give a shit, you can just, you know, go right ahead and call it good. So here, we do have a violet orb change, but I don't want to swap Guy out, and I also don't want to swap the hero out, because we're gonna, once we get the EX ult, we would generally buff with her. But since we do have 2 buffs that are able to be held, essentially, right? We'd be losing like the 30% crit resistance, but it's fine. So we'll go ahead and do this. Between this 1 orb and then the double stack of Valentine with the charm effect, we will get the EX ult for Blanc, and then we can go ahead and use the magic buff on Violet, send Blanc away for Sufia, and call it good. Now, we got not a great hand. We did want to save Guy's orb change, though. That's why we swapped the hero out instead. But there we go. There's the EX ult for Blanc. Go ahead and use the magic buff and Guy's orb change to get us at least 5 orbs. You know, it's better than nothing. But it is also enough to get everything that we need. So we only need 8, 16, 215 points, 205 points, 215 points, right? Yeah. So we're good on points now, and it's going into turn 5. So as long as we can nuke here, and you have the EX ult, and you've used the magic buff earlier, then you will be ready to nuke here. So we'll use the Guy buff. The crit doesn't affect Blanc anyways because she's magic, but the hero is here, and her crit does matter. So we'll just take Guy out for Blanc, and we'll bring the hero in for Violet since we don't need the Violet buff, or, you know, Sufia, it doesn't matter. So we'll use that, and we'll use that, and then we'll go ahead and nuke away here. So the EX ult, now this is just praying that we don't hit that nerfed crit, which we don't. So we do 1.1 million damage, which, you know, is the cap on turn 5. So when we see the score breakdown, there's max points and there's max turn bonus. And if you got a turn 6, you could still hit 1 million. It'd be a lot easier for you, but you'd be down to like 15,000 on the turn bonus instead of 17,500. So losing 2,500 points, you know, does make a difference, right, between getting a good score. There are people that have maxed out because they haven't taken a lot of damage because they've avoided the poison, and, you know, that is pretty much the bulk of the damage. You know, you can do that if you have the capability to do so, but I really don't care. So that's my best team score right there. Let's move on to the other team that can definitely do this, the Light 3.0 team. Alright, so if Normal 3 is pretty much relegated to the Light 3.0 team, or New Blanc at this point. So, mainstay, Protector Shuna, Milim, the hero, Raphael for the nuke, Megamine for the orb change and the alt buff, and Lumi for the light buff and green orb changing. That's pretty standard. We've got 4 turn 2 Protector traits right here. Well, Reamer is technically 1, 2, and 3, but you get what I mean. We're just stacking. Again, the point is to hit... hold on, excuse me. Had to sneeze. Anyways, the point is to still nuke on turn 5 and do 1 million damage. But again, if you're not, you know, fully duped out and you just know that you can't hit it, you can just push to turn 6 and you only lose like 2,000 something points. So it's not a terrible loss for people that are not trying to be tippity top scoring. So let's go ahead and find my recording of this. Now, the only interesting thing about using this team is that they did not set it up for the light team, really, in general, at least for the stacking side, because we have oranges and greens, and if you paid attention to the team build, we did not bring a converter for this, so we're just going to have to make do with it. So we're just going to bring in all of our turn 2 units that have protection gauge. We're going to send the 4 greens, and then we're going to just pray that RNG treats us well on turn 2, and we were able to get a full hand of blues. So a little bit of a clash there. That does work. Well, no, it does work technically. So as long as it hits the right unit, right? Or is this a bum run and I need to reset again? No, okay, it does. Okay, so we're going to Megamine Orb change, and it hits the Lumi Orb, which is good. So we can then swap out Megamine for Milim and then use her convert. And there's the full hand of blues. The only good thing about this team is that, we don't need an EX alt, but at the same time, we have no one to swap the alt out, or, in case we get alt super early, you gotta send it and then do extra damage, which if it's Raphael, that's fine, because he doesn't have any orb changing. He just has to come in and get all of those stacks of Pierce Power and Stun Strike. Here is a team, though, that you probably don't want Raphael up front for the crit nerf, so it's actually good that we got 3 orbs right here. So Shuna is gonna give him more stacks, and then give him alt gauge. So alt gauge charm getting a lot of use today, but that gets us his alt right here. So then on the rewind turn, we can do the 2 stacks of Shuna and then get him out of here. Now, since we're not using an EX character to nuke, you certainly don't need the alt rush charm. You can get, protection gauge on blues. You could get something else, but I just left it on because I was using it already. So definitely don't need more than 1 alt gauge for Raphael. But he cannot be up front now because we don't want him to take that nerf. So we're going to use the light buff early because we have enough points for it, and then we're going to send Raphael away until he's ready to nuke on turn 5. So we're going to bring Megamine in. We're going to bring Milim in for... what am I pointing at? Milim for Lumi, okay. And then we'll use both the orb changes, and that'll give us a full hand of blues. So that worked out fairly well right there. And then we just have one more turn. So we'll have to bring Raphael in, get this 1 stack of Shuna on, and then swap him out for Lumi. So hopefully we get some decent orbs for that. And, we do. We do, but we don't, right? So he can come in for the hero, and then that'll take the green orb away. Great. And then we can do the stack, and then we can bring Lumi in, and then we can just use Lumi and Megamine to handle it. Or Milim at that point. One of the two. Probably Milim, and then Megamine, actually. Yeah? You gonna click the things? Okay, yep. So yeah, Milim and Megamine right there. Full hand of blues. That'll give us another double stack of Shuna ready to go on turn 5. We've got Raphael chilling in the back with an alt and the light buff. So this will do 1,000,000 damage between the Milim buff, the Megamine buff, the Raphael's buffs, and the hero's crit. So we'll use the alt buff now and then get her out of here because we still need Milim up front. And then we'll swap in the hero for Lumi because we've already used her buff. So we're going to go ahead and do these 2 stacks. Now, I wasn't sure on this turn if I wanted to trust a full buffed Milim orb to lower his health down, because he does have a decent chunk of health left over, but Milim also has every single buff that we've used on this team, and I feel like she would have done way too much. He only has 44k, and even with the guard and defense, I think she's gonna do too much. So we end up not sending her orbs. Let's go ahead and just jump ahead to when we go ahead and choose it. There we go. So we're just gonna send the Raphael alt, and that does 1.1 million, so just enough. And that ends us at max turn and max score bonus of 72,108. So not quite as high as the other team, but it's still a very good score. So these are the 2 teams that are really going to get it, to where you want to be. If you have like Blanc and you have maybe the Konosuba Rimuru, you could use that stacking team and attempt this. I didn't try it myself because not a lot of people have the Konosuba meta. as we move forward. And the people who do have these teams to use anyways, so they have better options. But now let's move on to two teams that are just going to get you a score and move on, that are not built on stacking. Alright, so maybe your only options for light units is the Goddess of Destiny team, because they were, in the second anniversary banner, the big, free ticket one, and you managed to pull everything. It's a green-focused burst team, but Shuna is the DPS, and it can do quite a bit of damage in very short amount of time. So it's not a bad team. We've got Mirren giving us the crit. We've got the magic buff. We've got the light and crit damage buff. We've got the pure attack buff. Everyone on here is Goddess of Destiny, so Soka is giving the full 45%. As long as we nuke on turn 3, Rain is going to give us the extra 20%. So we're going to be at 40% magic and 20% magic resistance down. We are using the skill point units up front, so Milim and Soe, in order to use the Rain buff and the Sufia orb change on turn 1. And that'll get us really good. We need the EX ult for Shuna. We're going to keep her in the back and hopefully steal 6, hopefully, greens on turn 2 and get her EX ult very quickly. And then we're just going to nuke on turn 3 because I want max power, and that's going to do it. So we do have to skip ahead a little bit here. Right here. So it doesn't take very long either. So turn 1, we have 42 skill points. We have Sufia up front. We have Rain, so we'll use the orb change for Sufia, and the Rain buff, which is the green gauge buff increase, and also crit resistance down, which will be there still on the nuke turn. And then we're going to swap Shuna in to prep for next turn, and this is a little bit of praying that we get multiple orbs for Shuna to steal on turn 2, because we do want her to get all of this extra gauge right here and capitalize off it. And thankfully, we do get fairly lucky. So we get 4 green orbs when 3 Shuna orbs, which means that we can steal right here. And we can actually bring Triya in and use her orb change, which is, low cost. And then we can get a full hand of greens, which we then steal into 6 Shuna, and that is definitely enough to get her EX ult alongside all the gauge we got on turn 1. So there, max points, EX ult, double Mirren, doesn't really matter. We only need 1 usage of her. But max points means that we have everything. So we can use the Shuna buff, the Rain buff, and the Soka buff, and we're just ready to nuke here. Even though he has his defense up, it doesn't really matter. And we actually do considerable damage for a burst team against this stage, which is supposed to be like another 2 turns worth of buffs. But hey, if it's what you got, it's what you got, and it's not a bad score. So full buff right there. We've got the magic debuff on. I don't know why we're bringing Sufia in, but sure, why not? It's probably to do a little bit extra damage, because the other girls would have done a little bit too much, probably. So yeah, 1, 2, and then 3. So Sufia has the crit, and then we do 429,000 on the nuke, which obviously isn't a million damage, but it's not bad, right? And you may have pulled these units off of the free banner, so anything is possible. So we get a total of 511 out of a million. We do get max turn, because obviously it's not turn 5 yet, and we took a lot less damage because we didn't go to turn 5, but our total damage score is a little low. So this team does work, and as long as you're not like super try-harding right now, it'll get you a score, it'll get you tickets that you can take into the boss fight where scores really, really, really matter. But let's go on with the final team, which is, again, another burst team. Alright, the final team is the old Bride meta. Bride Shizu, Bride Shion, and Groom Rimuru is here. So it's another burst team. It's not going to do as much damage as the other brides do, but it is a light-focused team, and you do have the turn 1 orb change between Rimuru and Shion in order to get that turn 1 going. So we're looking pretty good. The newest unit here is technically Space Yuki, who came out in February, or January, depending. Well, no, actually February. But then, like Blanc, you don't need her for turn 2. You could sub her out for somebody else if you really wanted to. But everyone else is quite old on this team, so it does work. The only caveat is that my Shion is level 120, and she is skill fused, which means that she starts out with just more pierce power than what a normal Shion at level like 80 or 84 or even 96 would have, because she is skill fused. So that is one thing to keep in mind if you're going to use this team, is that if she's not skill fused, she's going to do less damage than what I'm going to show you. But turn 1, we'll use both of those orb changes. Every skill that we use stacks up Shion's Pierce power, so we have a lot of low-cost skills here to use. We also have the Rewind to take into effect, so we can apply the Light Leon buff on Shion before she goes away on the Rewind, and then that allows us, because we don't have any way to increase our skill point cap, right? We got to play around and do little funky things here. So we're going to Rewind here. We're going to put the Pierce debuff on, because it does last for multiple turns, and then we're going to bring Leon in for the hero. And we will use Leon's orb change now, because, like I said, every single time you use a skill, it stacks up the Pierce rate for Shizu and the Pierce power for Shion. So we want to use as many as we can in the 3-turn limit that we have. And now we'll use Shizu, give us the Pierce rate, give us the full hand of greens, which is good, because this will get us Shion's ult, and it'll also give us a lot of points and another protector, which is the other important thing. So, after this turn is over, we're not doing that much damage to him, but here we're going to use we're going to use the Leon buff here and the Shion buff, because we won't have enough points next turn to use either of those two skills alongside the hero crit and the Yuki debuff. So here we're going to use Shizu now, change the full hand to green, give us that guaranteed 100% chance to pierce for Shion, and send her away, and then we're just going to send this entire hand. It doesn't get us another Shizu, so that's why we used it on her before we swapped her out, to make sure she would carry it over into next turn, because we wouldn't be able to do it on turn 3. But we do have max points, so now we have, almost max points. We have enough to do what we need to do. So we can use the Yuki debuff, 25% ult resistance down. We'll just help our damage out, and then we'll bring Shion and the hero in. We'll apply the hero crit, and then we're going to go ahead and nuke, because we have the attack buff, the pierce buff, the light buff, and now we just need the crit buff, and we'll call it good. And we're going to nuke him. And thankfully we don't need an EX ult, so we'll send a few hero orbs, or maybe someone else. Alright, we're going to send one Rimuru orb, which we probably could have sent another hero orb too, but 213k, definitely not the 500k that the other brides did, and definitely not a million, like the big time teams, but this is an old team, and you may have pulled them off the tickets because they're quite old, and they're not EX characters, and those are fairly rare. But 44.2k, 296,000 total damage, max turn bonus though, so that's cool. But there we go. Those are the 4 teams for Normal Battle 3, and that concludes the series for the Jubilee 31 Normal Battles. So then tomorrow, I will drop the boss battle videos, and then I will have, all these videos are linked together. They'll be in their own playlist, as I said, and so they're easier for you to find. By the time this drops, it'll be Thanksgiving for a lot of people, so happy Thanksgiving to those who celebrate it, and if not, well, then have a happy Wednesday and Thursday, because I'm not doing jack crap for the rest of the week, essentially. So that's it for me, guys. Take it easy, and I'll see you all later.